G'day ladies and gents, and welcome back to War Thunder. Now, before we begin, I know the patch has basically just dropped about a week and a half ago, but I think it's time for a Gaijin Gib. A nice little video with an idea designed to make helicopters a little bit more interesting. Now, currently as it stands, a helicopter is worth 450 spawn points on first spawn without any ordnance that is guided. Now, obviously, I think this is a bad idea to start off with. I think helicopters should not be able to spawn first spawn because it has been proven over time that helicopters and all CAS in general should not be able to be spawned first off the bat. It just causes problems and it's just not enjoyable for tankers who are the main proponent of this game mode. And essentially, planes essentially are just there to give SPAA something to shoot at. Now, obviously, CAS has other roles, but I think giving helicopters a specific role, a specific unique ability, would be really, really interesting and would add a bit more depth to the game. Now, I think this could be added in random battles, but also if a tank EC ever made the main stage, I think it could also come to that as well. Now, what am I talking about exactly? Now, okay, so we know that helicopters are basically used for close air support. And essentially, without missiles, helicopters are pretty useless at any point except very early on in the game, when there are very few radar SPAA up, and when most people are rushing towards a cap and not looking to the sky. Most of the time, helicopters tend to either catch people off guard or hull break 906s, BMPs, or Bradleys, or anything light that can be hull broken. It tends to, get the short end of the stick. However, I think with this little suggestion, perhaps we could add a bit more depth. Now, just a quick return to the gameplay. In the background, you'll see me playing the Leopard 2. I thought that guy had a name tag over him until he shot at me. So, yeah, I'm a pilot first and a tanker second. You can't blame me, okay? You can't judge me, all right? All right? No judge, okay? I kill him in the end anyway, so, spoilers. Anyway, back to the discussion at hand. We're discussing the role or a potential role for helicopters. Now, I think helicopters could be given a little role where they have the ability to put down things. Now, I'm basically referencing a game called Heliborn, and for those of you who don't know what Heliborn is, it's essentially a helicopter-only game mode. Helicopter-only PvP, where you have certain situations where you have to take capture points, where you have to secure capture points. You have several different types of helicopters. You have your attack helicopters, your combat helicopters, utility helicopters, transport helicopters, and all these helicopters have the ability to, for example, drop troops off at capture points so that they can reinforce them. Now, obviously, Gaijin can't really do that because then they would have to raise the age of the rating age. So no infantry is able to be added in any way, shape, or form. Because essentially the way it works currently is if a pilot dies in-game, it is considered that they're knocked unconscious rather than actually killed. And so the game is able to be marketed to younger audiences as to be in line with the ERSB or the General Game Ratings Association or whatever you want to call it. Essentially, no one can die, which is quite hilarious when you consider what happens. But 183mm Hesh shell to the face, but it's okay. He's just gone to sleep. It's fine. It's something that we as War Thunder players can live with, but for developing new mechanics, we can't really, delve into infantry. So we have to think of other things around the infantry. So, for example, one of the things that you can do in games like Arma or Squad as well, I believe. I'm not really sure because I don't play either of them, but I have seen that you can set up a tow missile site. Now that's really interesting because essentially the tow missiles are to deal with APCs and to deal with MBTs from the side in kind of interesting tactical positions that you otherwise wouldn't be able to get to with an MBT, or that are a little bit, fishy or secluded or concealed. And I think that's a really, really interesting idea. I would give this ability to vehicles that are classified as utility helicopters. Vehicles like the Mi-24, vehicles like the UH-1, and vehicles like the Alouette, even the big boy Alouette, the thick one, the Alouette 3. Now, what you could do is essentially land on a certain point of the map and then press a button to deploy a tow missile site. It would deploy, say, 3 tow missiles manned by like an AI, quite like the one on your M19 or something like that. I think that would be kind of cool. So you have this M19 guy, basically, and he's just sort of sitting on the tow just for a little bit of, immersion or some visuals or whatever. I think that would be a really, really cool little idea. You could just have a little tow missile, and occasionally it'll shoot an MBT that passes by on its side. I'm all down for that, honestly. I think that would be a really, really cool idea because it would give the helicopters something to do. It would essentially give them some utility rather than them just being dedicated attack vehicles. And their utility or their value in the game would therefore be based off rather than just their attacking ability or their ability to destroy tanks. It could be their ability to defend capture points and hold strategic positions, not just to ruthlessly destroy. Now, obviously, you would have to get in really close for this to happen, and it would be risky. But once you set up the site, you could effectively defend a point or, create some sort of strategic impasse for the enemies that you could not otherwise do with a regular MBT or a missile carrier or something like that. Now, obviously, this would be limited, so perhaps only on your side of the map or only in certain spots. Perhaps it could even go outside the map, but you have a limited range on the tow side. So, say it's a 3-kilometer range, and you put it at your airfield. It's not going to do anything because the tow missile is not going to be near any MBTs. Now, obviously, any kills that the tow missile gets would be awarded to the helicopter, and the helicopter would get the RP. Now, the MBTs that destroy these things, or the SPAA or whatever that destroys these tow sites, would get RP for destroying the tow, perhaps for destroying one, and then you get a final one for destroying all 3. So you get a little bit for 1, you get a little bit for 2, and if you kill all 3, you get a nice big bonus. Or if you finish it off, you get a nice big bonus. And you could finish it off with MGs or a high explosive shell or something really simple. And I think that would add a little bit more depth to the game because you would have to watch out for these sneaky little tow missiles coming from in bushes, coming from, wherever. And I think that would be really, really cool just to have that extra mechanic in the game to give MBTs something to watch out for and give helis a reason to move in other than just capping or getting, easier kills like what I'm doing in the background footage. I think doing things like that just to add little details, little bits of depth are some things that players are really looking for. And rather than new game modes entirely, which would take a long time to develop, something as simple as this, I think would be a crowd pleaser very, very easily. And it's something that the developers can readily implement. Now, obviously, this would require internal testing, tweaks, and player testing and whatnot, but I think it could work. I think also for certain helicopters, perhaps the utility helicopters as well, you could land on a site and maybe it would drop smoke, and that smoke would then 30 seconds later spawn a super artillery or a modern artillery battery that would give essentially the MBTs and the APCs a bit of a buff in terms of their airstrike capability or their artillery capability. So you would be able to basically get a little notification on your screen that says you now have access to super artillery, and it would replace your current artillery. So obviously this would only be available to spaded tanks and premium tanks, but once it's there, it would basically have the same potency that current artillery has at low tier. I think that would be really interesting because perhaps it would take long to set up, but it's really, really potent. Perhaps it's really weak. Perhaps it only has a certain range. Perhaps it's very easy to spot and you can actually mark it on the map. These are little things that I think could add, again, a bit more depth to helicopters, which would really, really improve the gameplay experience for players. Simply because you're just adding a little thing that adds a bit more shine, a bit more buff to it and a little bit more, of course, I've overused this word, but depth. Because essentially what we've got now is you spawn in a tank, you run to the capture point, you capture it, you kill a couple of people and die, and then you jump in a helicopter and you just stay in the air for as long as you can because that's the easiest way to get frags. As long as you have teammates to hold the capture points, you're probably going to win if you do that. And so I'd like to give a little bit more depth to that, where you have that ability to engage, say, super artillery, and if it's very easy to spot, maybe you can range it and take it out with a high explosive shell, or maybe you can hull break it with an APFSDS shell. And if it's in a certain area, so say for example it's behind a hill, you won't be able to shoot things very easily. You could perhaps put it in a blatantly obvious spot like the giant hills in Vietnam, but it would be extremely easy to shoot. And these are things that helicopter players would have to be aware of. And I really, really like this idea. I've been mulling over it for a few weeks now. I'd really like to know your feedback, because I might put this on the forums, in the suggestion section, and we could have a discussion about this. Would it work? Would it not work? Maybe it's too overpowered. Maybe it's too complicated. Maybe it's just not interesting enough. Maybe I've misread the point. Perhaps helicopters are too strong already, and maybe they need nerfs rather than buffs. But personally, I think giving them something new to do will not quite distract them from their role, but it will force them to come closer. It will make them a bit more vulnerable for vehicles like the M163 and vehicles like the Gepard and the Falcon, where, they don't really have that much of a chance against, such strong vehicles as the AH-1Z and the Mi-35M. But, you can add that little bit extra zing to top tier. I honestly think I'm on the money here, ladies and gents. If I'm not, do let me know in the comment section below. I really want to know what you guys think, because, I just want to know what the general community feels about this sort of situation. There may be something, really interesting about this. Is it something that the community wants? Is it something that can be worked? Is it something cool? Is it something lame? Let me know in the comments section, because again, I'd like to develop a community that comes together, thinks of new ideas, and discusses them. I think that's really, really healthy for a game, and really healthy for a community in general, to constantly discuss things and not sort of wind up in your own little echo chamber and going, oh, heli bad, or MBT bad, I want my CAS back, or whatever. Anyway, ladies and gents, take care, and I'll catch you next time.